Okay, so I've had a couple of people just asking for a few more examples to go over with how to actually solve the equations. I think we're having pretty good success with setting them up. It's just the algebra steps that are kind of getting us a little bit. So let's just do a couple examples here. I'm just going to just pick a few just to have a couple here. So first of all, we have something like this. This is kind of the easier case. So when you set this up, you're looking at, well, we have opposite, we have hypotenuse. So this is sine of 35 equals opposite over hypotenuse, x over 15. So what we have here is we need to go back and think about our algebra steps. We have x divided by 15. So what we need to do is just get rid of the divided by 15 part. And well, the opposite of dividing by 15 is just times 15. So we're going to multiply by 15. And since it's an equation, we have to do the same thing on both sides. Well, that's just going to cancel that out. That's the whole reason we picked the inverse operation, multiplying to get rid of the division, which means on this side, we just have the x left over. So we have x on this side. On this side, we have 15 times the sine of 35. And that's what we would need to type into our calculator. I can do that real quick here. 15 times the sine of 35 is 8.6. So 8.6 would be our answer. That would be all you'd have to do on something like that. Now, where these get a little harder is the other kind, because this is a fraction. That variable can end up in the denominator. So let's just do kind of the same exact triangle here. Let's put the 15 here and the x here, and we'll still do 35. So we're still using sine. It's still 35 degrees. But now 15 is the opposite, so it goes over here, over x. Now, there's kind of two ways that I like to think about this. One is to treat this like a proportion. Any number can be written over 1. Every number over 1 is the same as this number. And then we can cross multiply. Well, x times 35 is x times sine of 35. On the other side, 15 times 1 is 15. Now that's the equation we've got to solve. And again, keeping in mind, this is an equation. So whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other. And I'm trying to keep the x. I want to get rid of everything except the x. And so here I have times sine of 35. Well, the opposite of times is divide. So I'll divide by sine of 35. If I do that on the other side, divide by sine of 35. Because again, this is an equation. I need to do the same thing on both sides. It'll cancel out there. On the left-hand side, I'm down to just x. And on the right-hand side, I have 15 divided by sine of 35. And then that's the part you're going to type into your calculator. So we have a few extra steps to do because this was an equation where there was an x in the denominator. And then I'll type exactly that on my calculator, 15 divided by sine 35, hit enter, and it is 26.2. Now, there's other ways you could think about that. If you don't like the idea of thinking about it like a proportion, let's just go with the same thing so you can see the same steps again. So we've got our equation set up. And one thing while I'm writing this out, you'll notice is that all of your equations are going to look like one of those two. If you're solving for a side, you're always going to have sine, cosine, tangent of your angle equals and then a fraction. It's either going to be x on top or x on the bottom because one of those two sides is the one you don't know. If you don't have an x in your equation, obviously you are not solving for anything. Okay, the other option, if you don't like thinking like proportion and you'd rather just do the algebra steps here, it's an equation. Do the same thing on the left and on the right. And here's the trick. Anytime you have an x in a denominator, anytime you see that x down below, we don't like that because we don't like x's in the bottom of fractions. It doesn't really help us at all. So the way we're going to fix that is we are going to multiply by x. Multiply by x. And that kind of seems like a strange thing to do, but what it does do is it cancels out this x on this side. And since we multiplied by x on the other side, now we have x times sine of 35. So the x is now in the numerator. There's no denominators to deal with. And since I'm trying to get the x by itself, I can divide by sine of 35. divide by sine of 35. My parentheses around there. It'll cancel out there. I'll type that in my calculator. And obviously this is the same problem as last time, so 26.2. And so those are kind of the two different ways to think about that case when the x shows up in the denominator. But one thing that I do want to kind of show you here, maybe you'll notice this after a little while. If you look at this original equation, I'm just going to move these out of the way. Oops. Undo. I'm just going to move these out of the way and grab my original equation here. There's my original equation. And here is what I typed in my calculator. So just taking a look at those two things. What you'll notice between these two equations is that all that happened when we were solving these equations, kind of the thing that we did, come on, stop doing that. The thing that happened here was, okay, that's fun, is we ended up just switching the places of the x and the sine 35. So it was sine 35 equals 15 over x. Now it's x equals 15 divided by sine 35. Obviously, the algebra steps behind why that works are there, but that's what ends up happening. The variable and the sine part have just ended up switching. And that will always happen because we're doing the exact same steps every single time, as long as that x is in the denominator. So there's a little video. Hopefully that helps on getting those solved when x is in the bottom. And hopefully I'll see you back in person soon.